afternoon, Algebra 1 students. It's the Livingston Howell show of how to do a Google site. I hope you're having fun with this because we are, and it's also going to therefore expand your knowledge and go deeper, hopefully, and then you'll have notes to use when you get into Algebra 2. So today, I'm going to go back to our website, so I'm going to share my screen. All right, so you always should have your rubric with you, but you should be familiar. This is my little test fun with functions. You should have already completed your title page, your table of contents, your about me in a song, and inserted your vocabulary. And you didn't have to put a song in here, but I had the quadratic song. So that was what you were to complete last week. So hopefully, if you have any problem with that, I hope you didn't have problems, but you can always watch our videos that are posted on Google Classroom. So now we're into the next section, and in the rubric, let's pull this rubric up, for week 2, it says, example of parent functions. Import a real-life example or graph of the following. And hopefully you remember from class that we studied 3 parent functions: linear, quadratic, and exponential. So those are the 3 we're going to have to put in our site, on our site. So I want to make sure we have a table of contents. So again, I inserted a text box. Go insert, and I made a text box. And remember, you have to use title or heading, so it will pop immediately up to your table of contents. So now I want 3 pictures. I have three different ones to help. So I'm going to look over here at layouts, and I see that there is, you could do 2 and 3 or the 3 equals. So I'm going to pick this layout to insert. And now I'm going to edit here, and I'm going to say linear. And you want to use normal text for this because if not, it's going to go to your table of contents. But you can make the text bigger, linear function, and then what would you put here? Quadratic. You can change the color, whatever you want to do. Be creative, so it's eye-catching to people that might share this with. And our exponential one, I'm just going to say EX, just to save time. Okay, so in here you might want to put your parent function, like y equals mx. Remember, you're going to need to remember all this for Algebra 2. So this is going to be a way that you'll have these notes to share with someone. Do your quadratic function. What is your parent function? Y equals x squared, and exponential y equals 2 to the x, or y equals 3 to the x. So you would type that in here. Now we're going to insert a picture. So there's several ways you can do that. You can upload a picture, you can select an image, you can go from Drive. So I'm going to select an image. And in this case, I'm going to go to Google Image Search, and I'm going to search for an image that's linear. Or you could think of, you could say linear graph, or linear graph example, linear equation, whichever. See what the different pictures are, like you can see. Now you want something that's linear. You could put something like this because there's a line here, the horizon. So you pick what one you like. This is like, I guess, a rocket going up in there. So what would be an example of a linear function? Any real life example or a graph, anything that looks linear for you, that's what you could put in your graph. So just, you can also make one in Desmos, so we'll talk about that later. I think this is a good point just to make a linear graph. Okay, here's one. All right, so I'm going to insert it. You might want to do something different, but that's a linear function. Then if I go to quadratic, I could select another image. I could go to Google Search again, and I put like a roller coaster because I know that goes up and down. Could be a soccer ball, could be football. You could do roller coaster drawing, like here, or you could, like, this is a parabola, right? It goes up to the highest point and down. So I'm just gonna, or you could do something colorful. It's whatever you want. It's your thing, but it has to represent a quadratic. And then you have that section done. And each one of these are worth 10 points. So you have that section done. So now we're going to go to our rubric, and we're going to talk about how to do the domain and range. And Mr. Howell is going to talk about that.
All right, so switching over to me, everybody. I'm going to go back to the rubric really quick and kind of show you what we were just talking about. So Ms. Livingston went over the example of parent functions with you, and now you have domain and range of a function. There's something that y'all need to realize with all of this, though, and that is Google Sheets, Google Docs, Google Sites, which is what you're using to build your website. They're all used for different things. And if you've noticed from the Google site that we've been working on, a lot of what is going on here involves putting a picture in. So if you are trying to get certain equations in math, if you are trying to get certain images, maybe that you've even handwritten, like, you're gonna have to do an image. And I wanna be clear, down here, Ms. Livingston was able to put y equals mx plus b because you can do that with a regular keyboard. But if you want to actually go and put in an equation, like maybe something with an exponent, or you want to actually start using different symbols like the infinity symbol, then you're going to have to use something that actually lets you do that. The issue is, even if you use something like, say, Google Docs, which is what I'm going to pull up right here, it doesn't always copy and paste correctly. So in other words, even though I can put an equation right here, because Google Docs actually lets you build an equation, it has an equation editor. If you copy and paste it over to something like Google Sites or even like Google Slides, it doesn't look right. So you wind up having to do a picture, and that's what I want to show you how to do really quick. So before we continue, real quick, if we look at this rubric, it says part A and part B. It just wants you to provide at least one example of domain and range that illustrates a function and explains why it's a function. That's no different than what Ms. Livingston just did. You just need to find a picture that goes along with that. But whatever picture you find of a function or not a function, you've got to be able to explain it. So if it's a table, you need to know how to look at a table and know if it's a function, or if you were to put a graph in there, same thing.
Right. You would want to use your definitions, and you can use your coach book, you can use your notes, you could use anything that we've given you in class to help you explain. And just, you know, a simple function is a table, and you could say which one is a function and this is not a function, and why. That we want to know why it is and why it's not, so you can demonstrate you know that concept.
Some of you may want to use something like Desmos. And I'm going to show you that really quick. Just say, for example, say we're doing part A right here where it says an example of a function. I'm not going to tell you whether or not I'm making a function or not a function, because there's no fun in me doing it for you. But I want to show you what you wind up having to do. So here's Desmos. It's free, desmos.com. And you can tell it to graph whatever you want to. Say 3x. Okay. You can even go up here to this little cog, this edit list, and you can even tell it to make a table. So if you were to take a picture of this table, you could actually put that on your website. The problem is you've got to figure out a way to actually get these images. And so you can take a screenshot, and that's probably going to be your best bet here, to take a screenshot. Yeah, it may help if you come over here to the little wrench in the top corner and put it like in projector mode, because it makes it a little easier to see. But then you can take a screenshot. Depending on what you're using, there are different ways to take a screenshot. Just look it up. In the case of like a PC like I'm on right now, there's actually a print screen button. So I'm going to hit that right now, print screen, and now I'm going to go back to Google Docs. Just keep in mind, I was talking about this thing having an equation editor, which it does, but also, if you come here and you paste that screenshot that you just took, well, now you've got this image, and if you save that image on your computer, you could upload it straight into your site. But what's really nice about Google Docs is it gives you the ability to only take part of it. So once you paste a picture on here, up here on this toolbar, you have the ability to crop. So if I click crop image, I can come down here and tell it which part I actually want a picture of. Hit enter. And now I can take this and actually make it bigger. And let's say, I don't know, maybe I'm not satisfied with this having the borders around it. I can crop it again and pull this over so that I've literally only got exactly what I want. Now you can right click this and say, like there it gives you the option to like save it to keep. But notice in here, it just says cut, copy, paste, etc. If you come over here to download, so if I go to file and I go to download, like I'm trying to download this page, nothing comes up that's actually an image. And so this is where we start running into some issues with how you can use Google to actually get stuff done. It turns out if you use Google Slides, you can download the whole slide as a picture. You can't do that on Docs, but Google Slides doesn't have the equation editor up here, which you would need if you wanted to actually write an equation. So not trying to confuse you, just letting you know when Google made these tools for you to use like Docs, Slides, Sheets, they put whatever they figured most people would need. So I'm going to take this real quick and I'm going to copy it and show you what happens whenever I go to Slides. So if I go to Slides, I can paste that picture that I just took on here. And when you paste that picture that you took, you can go to File over here and tell it to download. And now if you notice over here in Download, you have the option to download it as a JPEG image or a PNG, as well as some other like vector graphics formats, which you could use for different applications. Your site is fine with JPEG or PNG. So you could save this whole slide right here now and upload it as an image. Again, not trying to overly complicate this, but just letting you know if you want to actually create your own examples, there is a little bit of work. And once you work through it a couple times, it does become easier. But I just wanted you to be aware of that.
And you know, it's your project, so we don't want to be telling you. But I know, like when we first did this last year, we did everything in Google Docs and then just uploaded it. So if you are more comfortable that you've been in Google Docs, you could do your whole section on function notation. You can write about it in Google Docs, and then like we did vocabulary, just upload it to Google Docs. Some of you guys like to play around with all the different things like Mr. House said. I think that's great. So it's up to you. I mean, we're not going to give you points off if you do it one way or the other. It's as long as you have the information there. You can insert a table. I think a lot of you probably know how to use Google Docs. But you know, there's other options, and like Desmos is going to help you make the graphs. So you have different options of how to play around with it. And we have office hours, basically like office hours times that we'll be glad to help you play around with it.
And before we go back, I know some people are probably right now wishing that we would just go through the rubric exactly. Well, sorry, we're not going to go through the rubric exactly. We're just talking through the different pieces that we know you need to understand to be able to do the rubric. It's up to you to interpret what it's asking you to do and to pay attention to the point values. While we're in docs, though, I did want to point this out to you. So, as Ms. Livingston just said, you can actually do a lot of what we're talking about in docs. You could insert pictures in docs and then just connect the document to your site, and that would serve the same purpose. Up until the end of last year, Google didn't even have this available, what I'm about to show you. So it's a nice change that it's even on here, because before that, Microsoft had it, but Google didn't. And that is, if you go to Insert, you can go down and you'll see special characters, which is like different symbols, and you may find that you need to use some of those. There's also Equation. If you click Equation, it brings up this little toolbar here: Greek letters, miscellaneous operations, relations, math operations, and arrows. So if you do math operations, it brings up a whole bunch of symbols, some of which you've seen, some you haven't. Like this first one, for example, is a fraction. That's a square root. Down here, we're getting into like integrals and summations, and limits, which you wouldn't see unless you went on to calculus, possibly pre-cal. But this top part is definitely fair game for algebra, certainly for algebra 2 as well. So let's just hit this square root real quick. And let me just say, I want to do the square root of 25. And I want to see if I can make this bigger. Okay. I'm going to copy this real quick, and I'm going to paste it into the Google site that we have. Let's just say I want to put it here. I just told it to paste, and it just put 25. So over here, it's clearly the square root of 25, but if I copy it and just put it right here, it doesn't understand what I'm doing, because Google Sites, just like Google Slides, doesn't understand that equation editor. So what you can do here instead, notice how I've got Google Docs up here and Google Slides right next to it. If you do an equation and you want to actually be able to get that equation and put it over into your website, you can take a picture of your screen right here. So same thing as before, we can take a screenshot. Big hint, if you zoom in on it, your pictures are going to come out better, because it's going to take a picture of it actually being bigger on your screen. You'll have better resolution that way. But I'm going to take a picture of this. I'm going to say print screen. And now I'm going to go over here to my slides, get rid of this thing, and I'm going to tell it to paste, which when I right click, there we go, paste. Now I've got this. Notice now, since I took a picture, it's got the square root on there. It's got the radical. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to crop it down to just that radical that I want. And now suddenly I can actually do something with this.
So you can also take a picture of a Desmos, a formula in Desmos, and do the same thing too.
Exactly.
So you have lots of different options, because then you wouldn't have to go to Google Docs either.
The issue now, though, again, like what you could do, you could stretch this and make it the same size as your screen. You can change the side of the slide to make it smaller, but whatever you choose to do. When you go over here, you can tell it to download it as a picture. And so I'm going to tell it to download it as a JPEG. And I'm going to open this. And so see, this is the image that I actually wound up with, because it took a picture of the whole slide. But you could put that in. So like the idea would be, if this whole slide could be like the equation you were trying to do, and then you could put it in. But anyway, once you do this, you save it to your computer, and when you come to your website, now it's as simple as like clicking add a picture, and you can put the image in. The same is true. Say you were like, hey, I really don't want to go through all the trouble of trying to write equations on computers. You could always do it by hand as well. I mean, if you wanted to neatly write out something with a, with pen or pencil or a marker, you could then take a nice picture of that and upload it. So again, not telling you precisely what you have to do, just giving you different options.
And if you took a picture on your phone or something of it, then you could put it to your Google Keep and just slide it over into Google Doc and upload the whole to Google Doc. So there's just so many different ways to handle it. But the main thing is to get the information. Don't struggle too much on the technology. Have fun with it, but we're here to help you with it.
Right.
And to get it in there. So the main thing is to remember what is a function and define it with words.
So just real quick to kind of finish up on the rubric, Part C and Part D do require you to actually find real world examples. So C says create a real world example for either exponential or quadratic function that can be used to model domain and range. Use either set or interval notation to demonstrate the domain and range of the example you chose. Okay, well, what that means, again, not going to do it for you, but that means you need to find a real world example of something that would be modeled with an exponential function or a quadratic function. If you think back to the packets that we were working on before all this mess, we were working on exponentials. There were a ton of examples in there that would have applied to this. Real world examples of like exponential growth, exponential decay. This simply says, find a real example with real numbers and then say what the domain and range would actually be. Notice it says to use interval or set notation. I'm going to let y'all figure out how to put that on the computer. Again, it may be easier just to handwrite it and take a picture, or you may want to go into Google Docs and actually create something in set notation or interval notation. That's up to you.
And I'd like to remind them too, remember that interval notation we use parentheses, right? And on set notation we use the braces. And there's examples everywhere about what you should do. And remember, is it going to be infinity to negative infinity? Or if you're using a real life example, like people or something, you're not going to have negative number of people. So make sure you take that into consideration when you do your word problem. But look up word problems. They're everywhere. It's okay to take another example as long as you know how to talk about it.
Part D there, honestly, it's like the same conversation we just had, just with linear functions. So it says create a real world example for a linear function. Show how the function might be evaluated for inputs in the domain based on the context. Okay. We need to remember what evaluate means. And if you don't remember what evaluate means, look up what does it mean to evaluate a function. But basically that's saying find a real world example that is a linear relationship, a linear function, figure out what the domain would be, which are the inputs, and then actually discuss what that means. So as an example, I don't know, I want to think of something that's not linear. So for example, I'll just tell you this with quadratics up there. A lot of times you see quadratics in physics. A lot of times your input variable is time.
I'm having trouble.
So if you go and find like an example of a quadratic function, your input might be time. So what D is saying, maybe you find a linear function that's time, great, maybe that's your input. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean when you put time into your equation? What do you get out? It's wanting you to discuss that. Take your time on parts C and D. They're probably the most challenging part of this section. And notice together they're also 40 out of your 100 points. So you need to take it seriously. And if you have questions about it, certainly ask us. Don't allow yourself to get stuck, but also don't expect to be able to do this without actually looking at some of it on your own as well.
And don't forget, if you haven't already, make sure you share your website with us.
Oh, for sure, yes.
Because we won't be able to see. And if you're sharing it with us, and then if you call us, or you can team us or Zoom us or whatever, we can share your screen and see what you've done. So that would be good too. So don't forget to share.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's about all we've got. I know this has it's gone a little longer than I don't know, a little longer than we're encouraged to make these videos, but with us not being in class, this is the next best thing to us actually having a conversation with you. And even if you have to replay the video, even if you have to watch it in parts, just pay attention to what we're talking about. And if you want us to clarify part of the video, then you can ask us. But we just wanted to go over what we knew were going to be the common questions from this. And just kind of reflecting on everything that we talked about, because I've been getting some questions. You do have a great deal of flexibility with this. Yes, it's okay to do more than we're asking, but this rubric should be looked at as the bare minimum.
Correct.
So, and if you do the bare minimum, it's possible that you may miss pieces here and there, and you may find that your score is impacted. Whereas if you do extra things, who knows, we may award extra points or bonus points. We're not going to go through and label all the different things you could do to get bonus points. I mean, the possibilities are endless. But for example, I had someone ask, well, in the first section, can I actually write an about me? Like, can I actually write out something about me and say who I am? And my response was, of course. And if you do that, you just gave me more material. You just put forth more effort on your website. And since this is going to be used for enrichment, which we'll be talking about this week, really that's the whole point. We want you to be enriching yourself. We want you to be putting forth the effort and trying new things. So don't be afraid to push and do more than what we're asking.
Right, because we really hope these skills that you are learning about these sites can not only be used for math, but maybe you can also use it for other subjects. Okay, till next week, and we'll get the next section done. Please let us know. Don't live in a vacuum.
Yeah, really. Stay safe. I don't know.
Take care.
Okay.